My wife snapped, over it with my illness, betrayal, she cheated with many men. When I found out, she didn't mind. But after I got better, I left her with nothing. You think you know betrayal? Try this: the doctor tells you you're dying, that you have mere months left, and the first thing your wife does isn't cry, isn't hold your hand. No, her first move is to pull out her phone and start making spreadsheets. That's when I felt a cold dread creep in, a chilling suspicion that something was deeply, terribly off. The sterile hum of the hospital room, usually so unsettling, felt strangely neutral that day as the devastating words hung in the air. I'm Ethan, 38 years old, and I used to be the kind of financial analyst who lived for calculating risk, for planning for every worst-case scenario imaginable. Turns out, I never planned for this. 3 months before that moment, I'd been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. The kind where doctors don't talk about treatment plans, they talk about making you comfortable and counting the time you have left. My wife, Olivia, took the news like it was just another work assignment. Calm, organized, immediately practical. She set up a medication schedule, color-coded my appointments, even bought one of those segmented pill organizers. She'd even said, "Love is action, Ethan, and I'm here to act." I remember thinking how incredibly lucky I was to have someone so strong, so capable, in my corner. I was wrong. The first 2 weeks, everything was okay. She drove me to appointments. She made sure I ate. She even slept on the couch near my bed when the pain got really bad. But then, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. I started noticing little things, tiny cracks in the facade. The way she'd let out a soft, almost inaudible sigh when I asked for water. The way she'd quietly leave the room when a wave of nausea hit me. The sharp clenching of her jaw whenever the nurses explained just how much care I'd need at home. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. I needed help getting to the bathroom. I'm not proud of it, but the medication made everything a monumental effort, and I just couldn't manage alone anymore. I called out for Olivia once, twice, a third time. When she finally came in, the look on her face wasn't concern. It was pure, unadulterated frustration, like I'd interrupted something critically important. "Again," she said, not even a question, just this flat, resigned statement. She helped me, but her hands were rough, impatient. When we got back to bed, she didn't say goodnight. She just turned away, pulling the blanket over her head, putting an impenetrable barrier between us. That's when I really started feeling it. Not the cancer itself, but something far worse. The chilling realization that, to her, I was already gone. That she was just waiting for the paperwork to catch up with reality. The next morning, she apologized. Said she was tired, that caregiving was harder than she thought. And I believed her, because I wanted to, because I needed to. But things didn't get better. They got worse. She started spending more and more time on her phone, texting people I didn't know, laughing at messages she wouldn't share. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd just wave it off, just work stuff, or just friends checking in. I was too weak to push, too sick to investigate. My sister, Chloe, came by one afternoon to drop off groceries. Olivia wasn't home, even though she'd promised she'd be there all day. Chloe looked at me, at the empty water glass on my nightstand, at the medications I'd clearly taken late, and her gaze hardened. "Ethan," she asked, her voice low, "where is she?" I made excuses, tried to defend Olivia. Said she needed breaks, that it was hard on her too. Chloe didn't buy it, not for a second, but she didn't push. She just stayed. Sat with me until Olivia finally got home, 3 hours later, carrying shopping bags from stores that definitely didn't sell groceries. Here's what I didn't know then, but found out later. Olivia had already started seeing someone. A guy named Mark from her office. Married, unhappy at home, the whole cliché. She'd met him during one of those days she said she needed to clear her head. He gave her what I couldn't anymore, normal conversation that wasn't about symptoms or side effects. He gave her a version of herself that wasn't tied to a husband who might not make it to Christmas. She told herself it wasn't really cheating because, in her mind, I was already halfway gone. That she deserved some happiness before everything completely fell apart. That it didn't matter if I found out because, in her cruel calculations, I wouldn't be around long enough to do anything about it. And here's the really messed up part. She wasn't just waiting for me to be gone. She was counting on it. We had life insurance, savings, my retirement accounts, and because we'd been married for 6 years, she just assumed it would all go to her automatically. She'd even started looking at apartments, nicer ones, in better neighborhoods, places she could start fresh after I wasn't around anymore. I found this out later from her search history, but at the time, all I felt was her pulling away, and I couldn't for the life of me understand why. One night, about 6 weeks into my treatment, I was having a particularly bad episode. Fever, shaking uncontrollably, the whole terrifying deal. I called for Olivia, but she didn't come. I called again, louder, my voice raspy, and still nothing. I finally managed to grab my phone and text her, fingers fumbling. "I need help, please." 5 minutes later, she walked in, and I could hear her on the phone in the hallway, her voice hushed, saying, "I have to go. He's having another crisis." The way she said another made it sound like I was being dramatic, like I was interrupting her life on purpose. She helped me that night, but barely. And the next morning, she just exploded. "I'm dying too, Ethan," she screamed at me. "I'm dying in this apartment, in this routine, watching you fade away and knowing there's nothing I can do about it." I tried to reach for her hand, tried to tell her we'd get through it, but she pulled away as if my touch burned her. "You don't get it," she said, her voice cold now, utterly controlled. "I can't be the person you need me to be. I just can't." That conversation should have been a brutal wake-up call, but I was too deep in my own situation, too sick and afraid, to see what was really happening. I thought she was processing grief, dealing with anticipatory loss, all the things the support group pamphlets talked about. I didn't realize she'd already moved on, that she was actively building a life that didn't include me. That she was just waiting for nature to take its course so she could collect everything and leave without the messy inconvenience of divorce. But then something happened that nobody expected. Not me, not Olivia, not even my doctors. I started getting better. It wasn't a miracle cure, but an experimental treatment, a clinical trial my sister Chloe had found and basically forced me to try. The first few weeks, nothing changed. But then my energy started coming back. The pain became manageable. My test results started showing improvement. My oncologist used words like unexpected response and remarkable progress. Olivia didn't celebrate. She barely reacted. When the doctor said I might actually beat this thing, might get years instead of months, her face went blank. "That's great," she said, flat, emotionless, like I'd just told her we were having chicken for dinner. On the drive home, she was silent, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that something was profoundly wrong. That night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. But when I asked if she was okay, she just choked out, "I'm fine, just overwhelmed." Later, I found out why she was really crying. Because her plan had fallen apart. Because I wasn't going to be gone and leave her everything. Because now I'd be around to see what she'd done. See, Olivia had made a bet. She'd bet that I wouldn't make it. Bet that she could do whatever she wanted because I'd be gone before consequences caught up to her. And now that bet was failing spectacularly. But I didn't know any of this yet. I just knew that my wife, the woman who was supposed to be ecstatic I was surviving, looked at my recovery like it was the worst news she'd ever received. And that's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. To where she went, who she talked to, what she did when she thought I was too weak to notice. I couldn't confront her yet. I was still too sick, still too dependent, but I could watch. And I could remember. I started keeping notes. Nothing formal, just observations in my phone. Times she said she'd be somewhere but wasn't. Names of people she mentioned then never mentioned again. Receipts I found that didn't match her stories. My sister Chloe noticed too. She came by one day when Olivia was out running errands for the third time that week, and she looked at me, really studied my face, and said, "Ethan, what's really going on here?" I didn't have an answer yet, not a complete one. But I was starting to form it, and it was worse than anything the cancer had done to me. The disease was trying to end my life. But Olivia? Olivia was just waiting for it to finish the job so she could move on without the mess. The thing about getting better when everyone expected you to fade away is that people don't know how to react. And some people really don't want you to react at all. Olivia was one of those people. As my strength came back, as I started being able to move around the apartment without help, as the doctors kept using words like remission and stable, she got quieter, more distant. It was like she was mourning something that hadn't actually happened. I thought, maybe, she was processing the trauma of almost losing me. But I was wrong about that, too. About 2 weeks after my first clear scan, I was feeling good enough to do something I hadn't done in months. I cleaned up. Not a deep clean, just picking up around the living room, organizing the medication bottles I didn't need anymore. And that's when I found Olivia's iPad. It was tucked under a stack of magazines, unlocked, and open to her messages. I'm not proud of this, but I looked. I wish I hadn't, but I did. The first conversation was with someone named Mark, and it took me maybe 3 messages to understand the sickening reality of what I was reading. Messages about meeting up, about how being together was the only time she felt alive, about his wife getting suspicious and needing to be more careful. I felt my hands start shaking, not from the medication this time, but from pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I scrolled up. Weeks and weeks of messages, plans to meet, complaints about me, about how hard it was watching me fade, and how she needed this to get through it. Then I found another conversation, different name, Jake. This one was from a dating app. I could tell from the tone, casual, transactional, meeting at hotels, messages about escaping for a few hours. No drama, no emotional attachment, just a way out of her reality. And there were others, not full conversations, but enough to see a clear, horrifying pattern. My wife hadn't just strayed once. She'd built an entire separate life while I was too sick, too vulnerable, to even notice. My financial analyst brain, despite the earthquake in my chest, kicked in. I took screenshots of everything. Created a folder on my phone, backed it up to cloud storage, dated every single image. Then I put the iPad back exactly where I found it and sat down on the couch, trying desperately to process what I'd just learned. When Olivia came home an hour later, I didn't say anything. I just watched her, studied her face as she asked how I was feeling, if I'd eaten lunch. Normal spouse questions delivered in a voice that now sounded utterly hollow to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. So, I did what any risk analyst would do. I started gathering more data. I checked our phone records online, found numbers I didn't recognize, patterns of calls that happened during her supposed errands. I looked at credit card statements, saw charges at restaurants in neighborhoods she'd never mentioned visiting, hotel parking fees on days she claimed she was at her mother's place. The more I looked, the worse it got, and the clearer the ugly picture became. Olivia hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been systematic about it, calculated, and she'd done it all while believing I wouldn't be around long enough to find out or do anything about it. My sister Chloe came by a few days later, took one look at me, and knew something had fundamentally changed. I showed her everything, every screenshot, every statement, every piece of evidence I'd meticulously collected. Chloe's face went from shock to furious, then to something colder, more focused. She told me I needed a lawyer, that I needed to protect my assets before Olivia even knew I knew. She was right, of course. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed more time, more strength, more undeniable proof. The breakthrough came about 3 weeks later when Olivia made a mistake. A big one. She left her phone on the bathroom counter while she was in the shower, and it buzzed with a message. I glanced at it, couldn't help myself, and saw a preview from Mark asking, "Does he suspect anything?" I didn't read her response, didn't need to. Because that one line told me everything. She knew this was wrong. Knew she was taking a risk. And she was doing it anyway because she still didn't think I'd survive long enough to matter. That night, I decided to confront her. Not with accusations, not yet. But with a simple, potent observation. We were having dinner, the kind of quiet, uncomfortable meal we'd been having for weeks, and I just asked her directly, "Are you happy being married to me, Olivia?" She looked genuinely surprised, asked what kind of question that was. Tried to deflect by saying she was just adjusting to me being okay now. But I pushed, my voice calm, telling her I wanted the truth. And that's when I said the names out loud. Mark. Jake. Whoever else there was. The color drained from her face, then came rushing back, a furious crimson. She didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Instead, she got defensive, her voice sharp. "Have you been going through my phone?" I told her it was her iPad, that she'd left it unlocked, and the conversation instantly shifted from her actions to my discovery, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Then she said something I'll never forget. Something that revealed exactly how she'd been thinking this whole time. "You want to talk about this now? After everything I did for you?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and asked, "What exactly did you do, Olivia?" Because from where I was sitting, you checked out after about 6 weeks, and spent the rest of the time building a life that didn't include me. She insisted she'd been there every single day. But I told her the truth, my voice steel. Your body was there, sure. But you were gone. And you were with other people. She grabbed her purse, said she couldn't do this right now, and headed for the door. I asked, "When then? When were you planning to tell me, Olivia? Or were you just waiting for nature to take its course?" She stopped, turned back, and her face shifted from angry to something cold, calculated. She admitted it, not directly, but enough. Yes, she'd seen other people. Yes, she needed something outside of our apartment, outside of my illness and the constant fear. She said she needed to feel like a person instead of a caregiver. Needed to remember what it felt like to be wanted instead of just needed. I asked her directly if she'd thought it didn't matter because she believed I wouldn't be around much longer. If she'd already been planning what came next, inheriting everything and moving on without the mess of dealing with me. She didn't confirm it. But she didn't deny it either. And her silence was more damning than any confession. She left that night, said she was staying at a friend's place, needed space to think. I let her go, because I needed space, too. Space to make calls. To meet with the lawyer Chloe had recommended. To start building my own exit strategy. See, Olivia had made a fundamental miscalculation. She'd assumed that my illness made me helpless in every way, too weak to notice, too sick to plan, too close to the end to do anything about what she'd done. But I wasn't weak anymore. And I wasn't helpless. And I definitely wasn't done. Over the next few weeks, while Olivia thought we were taking a break and figuring things out, I was doing something else entirely. I was dismantling the future she'd built in her head, the one where I wasn't around, and everything we'd accumulated together became hers by default. I met with my lawyer. Reviewed our prenup. Yeah, we had one. I was a financial analyst, of course we had one. And I discovered something beautiful. It had an infidelity clause that Olivia had barely glanced at when she signed it 6 years ago. I gathered every piece of evidence, organized it, documented it, built a case that would make any divorce attorney weep with joy. I contacted my insurance company, my retirement fund managers, changed beneficiaries, updated my will. I separated our finances quietly, methodically, in ways that wouldn't trigger any alerts, but would lock her out completely when the time came. I even reached out to Mark's wife through a mutual connection. Sent her everything anonymously. Figured she deserved to know what her husband was doing during his supposed late nights at the office. And here's where it gets really interesting. I also compiled everything about Olivia's activities and sent it to her company's HR department. See, she'd been using company time, company devices, even company parking passes to facilitate her meetings with Mark, who also worked there. Corporate policies are pretty strict about workplace relationships, especially when they involve married employees lying to their spouses and using company resources to do it. All of this happened during that week she was gone, while she thought she was taking space to decide our future. I was systematically closing every door she thought would be wide open for her. And through all of this, Olivia had no idea. She came back after a week, apologetic, but not really. Said she wanted to work on us, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. She was just hedging her bets, keeping her options open in case I took a turn for the worse. But I wasn't getting worse. I was getting stronger every day. And with that strength came clarity, purpose, and something I hadn't felt in months, control over my own life. Olivia had been counting on me not making it to solve all her problems. To free her from a marriage she didn't want anymore, to give her financial security without the mess of divorce. Instead, my recovery created a different problem for her, a husband who knew everything, who had proof of everything, and who was no longer too sick to do something about it. She had no idea that while she was making plans for after I was gone, I was making plans for a life she wouldn't be a part of. The thing about revenge is that it's not supposed to feel cold. It's supposed to feel satisfying, like justice being served hot and immediate. But what I was doing wasn't revenge. It was something else entirely. It was just me surviving in a different way, making sure that the life I'd almost lost didn't end up in the hands of someone who'd been counting on me losing it. Olivia moved back in after her week away. And for about 2 weeks, we lived in this weird limbo where she thought we were reconciling. And I was just waiting. Waiting for paperwork to process, waiting for accounts to fully separate, waiting for all the legal pieces to fall into place before I made my final move. She actually tried during those 2 weeks, I'll give her that. She cooked dinners, asked about my doctor appointments, even suggested we see a marriage counselor. It would have been touching if I didn't know it was all a performance, if I didn't have screenshots on my phone showing her still messaging Mark, still making plans for after our reconciliation inevitably failed. Then, things started happening that she didn't understand yet. First, she got called into HR at work on a Monday morning. I knew what that was about, but she didn't tell me anything when she came home that day. Just said she had a headache and went to bed early. The next day, she was home all day, and I noticed she wasn't getting ready for work. When I asked about it, she said she was taking some personal days, but her voice was off, strained. I didn't push. I knew she'd been fired. I knew HR had received an anonymous package detailing her use of company resources for personal affairs. Knew that having a relationship with a coworker while both were married violated about 6 different policies in their employee handbook. She'd find out soon enough that I knew. But for now, I let her keep that secret. Let her think she was still in control of the narrative. My lawyer called me on a Wednesday morning while Olivia was in the shower. Everything is ready, he told me. All the documents are filed. All the changes are official. Divorce papers are processed. I just need you to give the word to move forward with service. I told him to proceed. That I'd handle things from my end that evening. When I hung up, I sat in our apartment and looked around at 6 years of marriage, 6 years of building something that was about to disappear. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just this calm, chilling certainty that what I was about to do was absolutely necessary. That afternoon, while Olivia was out, she'd said something about meeting a friend for coffee, though I knew better, I had Chloe come over to help me. We packed Olivia's essential items into boxes, clothes, toiletries, important documents that were hers. Nothing of significant value, because according to the prenup, she wasn't entitled to any of it. We stacked the boxes by the door, neat and final. That evening, Olivia came home from wherever she'd actually been, and I was sitting at the kitchen table with a folder in front of me, the kind of thick legal folder that never means anything good. She saw it. Saw my face. And I watched her expression shift from casual to cautious. I didn't waste time with speeches or explanations. I just opened the folder and slid the first document across to her. Divorce papers, already filed, already processed, citing infidelity with documented evidence attached. She picked them up, started reading, and I watched the color drain from her face as she realized what she was looking at. Then I slid her the second document, the prenup she'd signed 6 years ago, with the infidelity clause highlighted in yellow. If either party commits infidelity, they forfeit all rights to marital assets. That was the deal. And she'd signed it without really reading it because back then, she'd never imagined doing what she did. The third document was the detailed one, a complete accounting of every asset we'd accumulated, every account, every investment. And next to each one was a simple notation showing either sole ownership in my name or beneficiary changes to Chloe. Everything we'd built together, everything she'd been counting on inheriting, was now completely out of her reach. She looked up at me, and for the first time since my diagnosis, I saw actual fear in her eyes. She started to say something, probably to argue or explain or beg, but I held up my hand and kept going, because I wasn't done yet. I told her about Mark's wife, how I'd sent her everything, the messages, the hotel receipts, the timeline of their entire sordid relationship. I'd done it anonymously, just a concerned party, making sure someone knew the truth. But the effect was exactly what you'd expect. Mark's marriage was over, and his wife, who happened to be a lawyer, was taking him for everything she could. Then I explained why she'd really been fired. She'd thought maybe they'd discovered her relationship with Mark. But it was worse than that. I'd provided HR with a complete timeline of how she'd been using company time, company equipment, and company facilities to conduct her personal affairs. The parking pass she'd used to meet Mark at that hotel near their office? Company issued. The messages she'd sent during work hours? Company device. The afternoons she'd taken off claiming a doctor's appointment, but spent in a hotel room? Time theft. She tried to interrupt, to say something, but I wasn't finished. I told her about the apartment, how the lease was in my name only. Always had been. And I'd already given notice to the landlord that she'd be vacating by the end of the month. Her boxes were by the door, everything else she could collect with a police escort during designated times I'd arranged with my lawyer. She finally found her voice, started talking about how she'd taken care of me, how she'd been there, how she deserved something after what she'd been through. I let her finish, let her get it all out, and then I said the only thing that truly mattered. You were counting on me not making it, Olivia. You built your whole plan around me being gone, around inheriting everything and starting over. You just forgot one thing, I'm still here. She tried a different approach. Tears now, saying she'd made mistakes, but she'd loved me once. That had to count for something. I told her it did count. It counted for the 6 weeks she actually helped before she checked out completely. And I appreciated those 6 weeks, I really did. But they didn't erase the months after. Didn't erase Mark or Jake or whoever else there was. Didn't erase her looking at my recovery like it was a disaster instead of a miracle. She asked where she was supposed to go, what she was supposed to do with nothing. I reminded her that nothing was exactly what the prenup promised if she cheated. That she'd agreed to those terms. That this wasn't me being cruel, this was just the consequences of her own choices finally catching up. I suggested she could stay with one of the men she'd been seeing. Maybe they'd help her get back on her feet. Though I doubted it, since they'd only been interested when the relationship came with no strings and no consequences. She grabbed her purse, her phone, looked at the boxes by the door like she couldn't believe this was happening. She turned back one last time and said something about me being vindictive, about me destroying her life because I couldn't handle the truth. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said the last thing I'd ever say to my wife. I didn't destroy your life, Olivia. I just survived mine. You made your choices based on me not being here to see them. That's not my fault. She left. Didn't take the boxes, just walked out like she was going to come back later and find this was all some kind of sick joke. But it wasn't a joke, and she wasn't coming back. And over the next few days, the reality set in for her. Blocked credit cards, frozen accounts, locked out of everything we'd shared. She tried calling, texting, even showed up at the apartment once, but I'd changed the locks and had Chloe there with me. We didn't answer the door, just let her stand in the hallway until she finally left. My sister Chloe came by the day after that final visit, helped me donate the things in those boxes that Olivia had never collected. We didn't talk much, just worked in silence. And when we were done, Chloe looked at me and asked if I felt better. I told her the truth. I didn't feel better, but I didn't feel worse either. I just felt like I'd closed a door that should have been closed months ago. Like I'd finally stopped letting someone hurt me just because I'd been too weak to stop them. 3 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Olivia was living with her mother, working retail, trying to put her life back together. Mark had gotten divorced, lost custody of his kids. Last I heard, he'd moved to a different state trying to start over. Jake had apparently never been more than a stranger to her anyway, so he just disappeared back into whatever dating app he'd come from. As for me, I'm still here. Still in remission. Still rebuilding my life one day at a time. I don't think about Olivia much anymore. Don't wonder if I was too harsh or if I should have given her another chance. She made a bet on my ending, planned her future around my absence, and when that bet failed, she lost everything. That's not revenge. That's not even justice. That's just what happens when you build your life on someone else's grave before they're actually in it. What do you think about this story? Was I justified, or did I go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm reading every single one.